I'm very excited to be beginning this class. We're going to start on the book by Geisler and Turek, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. I have been reading apologetics books for many, many years, and I think this is one of the best. And it takes 12 points. It starts from someone who's a complete skeptic and goes through 12 points, and by the end, it proves through science and logic and reason that Christianity is the one true religion, one true worldview. I think it's so important, and I'm glad you guys are going to go along on this journey with me. So the rest of the classes, the next 8 classes, how many classes do we have? 6, 8 classes will be on this book. Before we begin, I'd like to pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we love you so much. We're so grateful, God, that you don't leave us here in darkness, but that you give us light. You're the light of the world, God, and you've opened our eyes and you've let us see the truth. And God, thank you for authors like Geisler and Turek who put down science and who show us, God, that you are the only one true God. Because we know, God, that you created everything, that all of science is going to lead to you. So we pray, Lord, that the Holy Spirit will be in everyone here and fill us all with wisdom and understanding. I pray that we will remember what we learn. Pray that everything that's said will bring you glory and honor. In Jesus' name, amen. So are you enjoying the book so far? Okay, good. I think so. Always, whoops, oh no, here we go again. Is it not? Uh-oh, it's not working again. So 1 Peter 3:15, someone, do you want to go get Tom? Does anyone mind grabbing Tom? Because I really need these slides to teach. Thank you. 1 Peter 3:15 says, always be ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. The word defense, there we go. The word defense is apologia in Greek when it was written. And it means, that's where we get the word apologetics. So the word apologetics means defense. It's used 8 times in the New Testament. For example, it was used, Paul said, knowing that I am put here for the defense of the gospel. That word is apologias. Colossians, we're commanded to know how to answer every man, to give a defense. And in Jude said we must earnestly contend for the faith, give a defense. An apologist is someone who shows how good reason and logic and evidence support or contradict a belief. That's what an apologist does. And we are all commanded to be apologetics. What is the goal of an apologetic? Oh, goodness. Here we go. The goal is to win, The goal is evangelism. All right. Maybe we can get help one more time. I'm sorry, guys. According to Paul's custom, he went to them, and for 3 Sabbaths he reasoned with them from the Scriptures, explaining and giving evidence about the Christ. It's not working. No, sorry. I don't know why. That's what an apologetics does. Okay, you reason with people with the Scriptures. So just use these. Yep. Okay. And then there we go. We win. The goal in most conflicts is destroy your opponent. For us as apologetics, we want to win our opponent. So we do it, as Peter said, 1 Peter says, with gentleness and reverence. You never argue with anyone when you're evangelizing. You never argue with anyone if someone believes a false worldview, someone has a different belief. You don't argue. That's not what you're supposed to do. We are supposed to be gentle. We're supposed to be reverent. We actually earn the right to have these conversations with someone by loving them. And it's not about being right. And we have to be humble when we have these conversations with people. Another reason we have to be an apologetist is we have to refute error. This is for those in the church and outside the church. There are times when you might be sitting in a Bible study or somewhere, and you might hear something that's not in the Bible. And as a Christian, you should go to them in privacy, with gentleness, love, and respect, and have a conversation about it. So, we're not supposed to let error go on. And why? Because beliefs have consequences. I tell my children the story of people who had, let's say you have a 7-Eleven and a gas station, and in front of you is a freeway, and everyone's going, thousands of people are going down the freeway, and they're going to a brand new Disney World, where you get to stay at this nice resort in Disney World. It's going to be so much fun. And on the way there, there's a big cavern, there's a bridge that goes across, everyone's on their way. But you know that the bridge is out, the bridge fell. You also know there's a tiny, narrow little road that goes off to the right, and the narrow road will take you over this big, nice bridge that'll take you right to the front door. How loving are you if you tell people, here's some water, here's some gas, have a great day, and send them on this highway with everyone else, knowing that they're falling off the bridge? How loving are you? And that's basically, as a Christian, what we do when we don't evangelize, when we don't tell people about Christ. We're just patting on the back, have a nice day. And when we know that there's a narrow way, we know that, God said broad is the road and many are on it for destruction. Narrow is the way to life. So it's not easy. You have to earn the right to have these conversations with people. You can't just go out. I think it's hard to just with a loudspeaker and have people listen to you. You have to make relationships. But with those you love, people you know are on the broad way, the most loving thing you can do is to tell them about Christ. We also need to be an apologist because believers have doubts. We all have had doubts. All these questions, it's not wrong to doubt. A man said to Jesus, he said, I believe, but Lord, help my unbelief. Jesus didn't chastise him. I mean, God knows when we have doubts. He doesn't chastise us. He says, here, let me help you have more faith. Let me help you, show you the answers. And these are all questions that by the end of the class, you will be able to answer for yourself and for others. And finally, we want to make sure that we avoid deception. It's very easy to be deceived. There are people in the church who use Christian words and seem to be Christian who can deceive you. And the only way we can keep from being deceived is, as we said, read the Bible, know it. The FBI, you know what they do for their people who are in their people, what is it called? Counterfeit department. They have the FBI have men study only the originals. All they do is study the originals. They don't look at counterfeit. They know the originals front and back. So that when they see a counterfeit, they recognize it. Same thing. If we know Christianity front and back, I promise you, you will recognize any counterfeit. You'll say, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. So why do most people believe what they believe? Well, most people do not do what you're doing. Most people do not really look into their worldview. They don't look into the beliefs. They just believe what someone told them. The professor told them that the Bible, science disproves the Bible. They believe it. Or, the Bible's full of errors. They believe it. They just believe people around them. They believe things based on what's attractive. Oh, you mean it's okay to sin? Okay, I'll believe that. Sin is real. Oh, yeah, I'll believe that. Believe, and they don't. That's not the right reason to believe. People believe what they believe. They should believe what you believe, based on what makes sense in your mind. So it's not just what's in your heart, it's also what's in your mind. And your beliefs or your worldview, your religion should be a combination of faith plus facts. And as you'll see, there are a lot of facts for Christianity, and the other worldviews have this many facts, meaning they have to have a lot more faith to get to belief. So in this class, we are going to use science to prove Christianity. We're going to start with someone who's a complete atheist, and we are going to use empirical science, which is using our senses to study present repeatable events. That's basically the scientific method. And then forensic science is using logics to study past and unrepeatable events. That's what you do in a court. When you're sitting in a court and you call witnesses, that's what forensic science is. And we're going to use them both. In the book, they go through 12 points that show Christianity is true. And that's what we're going to do in the rest of this class. I think you all have the book, and so you can see it in the beginning. We're going to start with truth about reality is knowable. That kind of seems silly, Like, why would we start with that? But you've got to realize that most people have a false worldview, and they believe A, that truth doesn't exist, or B, what's true for you isn't true for me. So how do you tell someone that Christianity is the one true religion if they don't believe in truth? So it's sad, but today you really have to start with this. You really have to convince people that yes, truth exists, and yes, you can knowable. You can know it. You can discover it. It seems like common sense to us, but it's not to other people. So what do we know about truth in the book? They go through several things that we know about truth. All truth claims eliminate the opposite and could be called narrow-minded. So, for instance, an atheist, they believe that there is no God. And if you believe there's a God, you're wrong. That kind of makes them narrow-minded. A skeptic or an agnostic believes you can't know if God exists or not. And they believe that everybody who knows yes or no there's a God, they're wrong. That makes them narrow-minded. Even a pluralist who believes all religions are right, they believe all religions lead to God. And if you say only Islam or only Christianity leads to God, you're wrong. So you see, every single belief that someone has is narrow-minded. And they believe they're right and everyone else is wrong. It's not, but you tend to hear that Christians are narrow-minded, but everyone has that. I just put this up here. This was in the book, but my neighbor has this on her car. Not my New Age neighbor. To the right, I have a neighbor who's an atheist. Lived there 9 years. I love her to death. I invited her to Bible study right when we moved in, and she looked at me and said, "No, I don't believe in God. I don't want any of that stuff." So we walk our little dogs together at the same time. We both have little poos, Maltipoo, Bichon Poo. And over the years, I've developed a good friendship with her. And at first, every time I talked to her about God, she was hostile. But through the years, I have earned the right to share with her. And the beginning of the summer, I gave her this book, the book that we're reading. I gave that to her, and then another book, Case for Christ, and she said she'd read them. So I'm just giving you an example. That's the best way to evangelize. And giving books is probably one of the main ways I evangelize. Apologetic books, I've given so many out. My husband is scared to ask how much we spend on books. But I tend to give them to people who are not Christians. And I give The Case for Christ, this. Tim Keller has a book, The Reason for God. And I'll buy, and I'll say, but it's only once I've formed a relationship with someone. It is a great way to reach out and to evangelize. But anyway, so my neighbor has this in her car. And I see it every day. I'm like, what is up with that? This is, represents all these religions. And I said, that looks a lot like pluralism and tolerance. I looked it up. Sure enough, it's a postmodern belief, and it stands for tolerance and pluralism. We talked about this. Tolerance, you must accept every belief is true. Pluralism, all religions lead to God. But with tolerance, I think the day is coming. Right now, people aren't tolerant with Christianity. I just read something from Hal Lindsey. I think the day is coming when it's really the world, America's going to be very intolerant to us. Hal Lindsey recently wrote, "There will come a day, and soon, I believe, it may well be illegal to proclaim that Jesus Christ is the only way to salvation in heaven. It's already becoming difficult to express Christ's views on the sanctity of life and the Bible's definition of marriage." So I really believe that's coming. But just remember 2 Timothy 1:7, "For God didn't give us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and self-control." So we don't have fear when we know that more and more we are going to become less tolerated. And then pluralism is a belief that all religions lead to God. In the book, do you remember the story of the elephant that explained pluralism? So they have their eyes closed, and one says, "Oh, it's a snake." And they grab the trunk. "Oh, the tusk is a spear." "Oh, it's a wall, it's a tree." They grab the tail, it's a rope. But what's interesting is they were all blind, and they were all wrong. And that's what pluralists are. The person who is the narrator, who could see, and Christ comes so we can see, right? He is the light of the world. He takes us out of darkness The one who could see saw that it was an elephant, and they were all wrong. So I don't understand how that is a story for pluralism, but they use it. But a pluralist. So what do you do when you want to evangelize someone who's a pluralist? One of the first things they will say is, you should not question someone's religious beliefs. If you try to have a conversation with them, you should not question anybody's religious beliefs. But did you know for us as Christians, we are commanded to question beliefs? We are not supposed to just trust what everyone says. In Deuteronomy it says we must not listen to the words of a prophet or a dreamer or anyone who tells us about false gods. 1 John it says, test the spirits. Do not believe everything you hear. In Galatians it says if someone should preach a different gospel, they should be under God's curse. So we're not supposed to just believe everything we hear. We're supposed to test. We're supposed to question. So what you say to someone who says you should not question someone's religious beliefs, you tell them that testing religious beliefs is true for me because it's commanded in Christianity. So it might not be true for you, but it's true for me. And they're being very close-minded when they say that, because we can say it is our religious belief, and you're supposed to believe our religious beliefs. Our religious belief is to question religious beliefs. So what if a pluralist says you should not judge? Jesus said don't judge. Well, Jesus said not to judge hypocritically. If you read the whole passage in Matthew, you hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, and then, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Don't judge hypocritically. We can't go through life without judging. First of all, realizing that we're sinners, we're judging ourselves, right? We have to judge ourselves and say, yes, we're sinners. But you can't, like if I need to go to the restroom, I look up and there's a picture of a stick person with pants, a stick person with a skirt. I make a judgment. I'm going in the one with the skirt. When I get up at the movie theater, there's a door that says exit, and then there's the entrance. I make a judgment. I'm going to the exit. We make judgments in every day. So for someone to say, don't judge, life, you can't live without making judgments. So we're just not supposed to judge hypocritically. Also, you have to ask a pluralist, if you're going to accept all beliefs as true and religions as true and right, what do you do about 9/11? What do you say to a Muslim terrorist who believes, in harming women? You've got to accept it all. You can't just say, oh, I believe in pluralism, except for that. And then finally, you have to say that, are they ready to face the eternal consequences of being a pluralist? And the story in the book is of the college student from Kentucky went to a church. Do you remember that story? And the pastor said, I love this story. The pastor said, okay, today we're going to talk about why all religions are true. And he basically at the end was trying to sneak out, and he said, oh, son, what do you believe? All religious beliefs are true. And he leaned over and said, I believe you're going to hell. Oh, well, that's not true. So pluralists are easy to get them to come around and say, okay, so maybe I don't believe in pluralism. So anyway, but just going back to this coexist, when I see it, I think snails exist, weeds exist. I don't think we're here to just exist. That's what I say. I think that we're here to have abundant life. And so I choose not to just exist. I choose to follow Christ so that I can have life and have it to the full. So the next thing that in the book we learn is truth is discovered, not invented. You know that universities originally were founded by Christians who wanted to unite all the different diversities, unite diversity, that's where you get universities, all the different diversities, math, humanities, science, under the truth of Christ. If you look at the mottos and the mission statements of Harvard and Yale and Princeton, it was all originally about Christ. They knew the truth. Today, if you go to these universities, they can't answer where people come from, where the universe came from, what's the meaning and purpose of life, where are we going, all those things that we so easily answered, they can't answer. I have to tell you a funny story. Last March, I was out staying right next to Stanford, California, My husband went to Yale, and we were staying with friends, good friends, who also went to Yale with him, and they went to Stanford for business school. And Yale has a new president. He was speaking at Stanford, and so we went to hear him speak. And so he got up and he said, I'm so excited we're now getting the different diverse areas to work together. And I'm thinking, it's taken you all these many years? They were doing this 200 years ago. Didn't say anything. Okay, so he said we've got the health department working with the psychology department, and we did this big study and spent all this time and all this research, and we discovered that kids who are overweight tend to have friends who are overweight. And kids who are athletic tend to have friends who are athletic. And I wanted to laugh. I looked at my husband and wanted to laugh. And I thought, my 5-year-old knew that. I mean, you look at the playground. You're excited about that? But, I thought, this is it. This is the Yale president speaking at Stanford to all these intelligent people. But when you take the truth out of education, that's about all you have, is silly studies like that. You look at little details, but they can't see the big picture. And unfortunately, people are not trying to discover truth anymore. They just are not interested. So it's really ironic, but it's also very sad. That was his big study. Crazy. The next one is truth is transcultural. If something is true, it's true for all people in all places at all times. 2 + 2 = 4 in China, in Russia, in India. Truth doesn't get to California, all of a sudden stop. Change as it goes over the Pacific and becomes something different when it gets to China. Truth is the same everywhere. Truth is unchanging even when beliefs about truth change. So that when people believed the world was flat and then they suddenly believed it was round, the world was round the whole time. By the way, people will say, some scientists might say, call Christians the flat earthers. Have you ever heard that? Did you know that in Job, one of the oldest writings we have, the earth is called a sphere. So the Bible the Bible has called the earth round right from the beginning. So it is not Christians who thought the earth was flat. So you can just say, look, God has called it that for many, many thousands of years. Anyway, just a little aside there. Sincere beliefs cannot change the truth. There was a man who was unloved, lost. He was sent to prison. He found Islam and came out and started 30 Islamic communities. His name was Malcolm X. He was very sincerely a Muslim. He believed it sincerely, but it still doesn't change the truth. The attitude of one professing something doesn't make it true. When I was in college, I was on the speakers committee, and I sat next to a man named Carl Sagan. He was the one who, the cosmos is all there is and all there ever will be. He's a very famous scientist. He's since passed away, but he had over 500 million people who watched his TV shows and read his books and watched his movie content. And I sat next to him as a Christian, and all there is the universe, it's all there ever will be. I wanted to ask him so badly, how do you know that? How can you know that? But I didn't, because I was so kind of in awe of this man who had 500 million people watching him and following him, so that made him an expert. But you know what? An attitude of one professing something, even though he had the expert attitude, you can have a PhD, you can have a robe and letters, and you can be the president of any institution and have all the attitude in the world, but that doesn't make something true if it's not. All truths are absolute truths. This morning when I woke up at 6, I was tired. That's true for everybody everywhere. It doesn't change, right? So does truth matter? What if your spouse says, I'm not having an affair, but you find out they are? Does that matter? Yeah, it does. What if your child said, I have all A's? You find out they're failing. That matters. What if your doctor says you're fine, you found out later you've had cancer for a long time, didn't do anything about it? That matters. If your banker says you have no money, but you do have a lot of money in the bank, you can't get it out, that matters. If a judge says you're guilty when you're innocent, if a pilot says, I haven't had anything to drink, but they have been drinking for 2 hours, that matters, right? If your auto mechanic says your car's fine, you get on the road and it blows up. If your boss says says you're getting a raise because your paycheck is not there. Okay, truth matters with everybody, except for two areas, religion and morality. I mean, how irrational is that? People want truth in everything. They demand truth from everyone in their lives, except for in religion and morality. Why? Because they don't want to be accountable for religion and morality. People want to be their own boss. People want to do what they want to do. So they come up with silly things like, oh, truth is relative. Oh, it doesn't matter what you believe as long as you believe in something. How do we get people to realize that truth and religion and morality matter? In the book, there's a great tactic, the Roadrunner tactic. Do you guys remember reading that? I love that tactic. It says, if someone says there's no such thing as truth, you say, is that a true statement? Or there's no such thing as absolute true. Are you absolutely sure? All truth is relative. Is that statement a relative truth? It's true for you, but not for me. Is that statement true for you, but not for me? Truth can't be known. Is your belief that truth can't be known a true belief? Like, you can catch people. And so it's really interesting, and I've read this a while ago, and I found situations where this comes up. This is called a self-defeating statement. It's like someone saying, I can't speak a word of English. You just spoke English. It's kind of easy to find, but people who believe there's no truth in religion and morality will say things that are very irrational. And you can be very loving, but you can say, is that statement true for you, but not for me? So make people think that what they're saying is very irrational. And then for anyone who's a skeptic, for instance, an atheist, are you absolutely sure that God doesn't exist? These are 3 questions you can use for anyone, and these 3 questions you can use for a wide variety of beliefs. If someone says they're an agnostic, are you absolutely sure that you can't know if God exists? You absolutely sure? And then you say, what evidence do you have? Can I give you evidence that suggests otherwise? And we're going to go through the evidence here in this class. And you should leave with enough evidence that you can have an intelligent conversation. So you can say this to anyone who's a skeptic, anyone you want to witness to. Are you absolutely sure that evolution is true? What evidence do you have? Can I give you evidence that suggests otherwise? Are you absolutely sure that there's no creator? Are you absolutely sure that truth doesn't exist? Whatever belief that people have, you can use this. And then, well, what evidence do you have? More than likely, you're going to get a big 0, because we said most people believe things that they want to believe because it's attractive, not because of evidence. Most people aren't as bright as us in learning truth. I hate to say that, but I am. Most people don't really go on a hunt for truth, unfortunately. So you say, can I give you evidence that suggests otherwise? So if anyone tries to tell you there's no such thing as truth, they're asking you to believe them, so don't, right? So if someone says, okay, so I believe in truth, but I don't believe in Christianity. Why are so many people against Christianity? There are really 3 reasons. The book gave 3 reasons. Emotional reasons. With people with emotional reasons, you can witness to them. People who say Christians are intolerant of other religions, or people who say billions of people are wrong. Hell can't exist if God is loving. You can say, billions of people can be wrong. Jesus, in fact, told us that billions of people will be wrong when he said, enter through the narrow gate. Wide is the gate and broad that leads to destruction. Small is the gate, narrow the road that leads to life, if you find it. So we know that, yes, most people are not following or on the way to life. And you can say, hell can't exist if God is loving. Hell was originally created for Satan. And God is also just. But God has given you an out. God has given everybody an out. God died for everyone's sins. But people have to accept it. It is a gift, but it's accepted. He does not force himself on anyone. If someone says, God, I don't want your gift, I don't want anything to do with you, he will give them their preference, what they asked for. And hell is basically a place where you are separated from God. God is love. God is all loving. Everything good and perfect comes from above. So if you want to be separated from God, it is hell. And if you want to pay for your sins, that's where you will go. God has offered you, what more could he do? Offered you forgiveness, what more could he do? So if you kind of give an explanation to someone, but you have to have the conversation. Other people say that Christians are hypocrites. Hypocrisy is probably one of the main reasons people don't want to be Christians, because they know a Christian who isn't very nice, or who gets drunk or does whatever, and they say, you know what, I don't want anything to do with it. And with that, all we can do is make sure we're living like Christ in that situation. Intellectual reasons, people who are not Christians because of intellectual reasons, those are the people that we really can reach out to and lead to Christ the most with apologetics, and there are a lot of them out there. There are people who say, well, I don't understand, for instance, evil. Or someone says, I don't understand why bad things happen to good people. And in your Christian Review book, there's page 66, you can look up suffering, and have 3 pages there about what to say to someone who's suffering. Or someone says, only science yields truth, or science has disproved God. There's also in the book, page 99, 3 or 4 pages about science in the back, Appendix B, things you can say to someone, not in that book, but in the handout, the study guide, yes, the Christian Worldview Study Guide. Things you can say to someone who says, I believe science trumps God. You can look there. So those people we can use apologetics. People who say that they don't want to be a Christian for volitional reasons, all we can do is pray. Do not even engage in apologetics with someone who says they're not a Christian for volitional reasons. Basically, that's someone who says, I don't want to give up my sin. I don't want to be accountable. You can prove to me that God exists. You can prove to me, that there's heaven and hell. I don't care. I'm not giving up my sin. I want to be my own boss. Someone's like that, you pray for them. It's not worth getting an argument. You need to pray for the Holy Spirit to work on their hearts. Why do we believe what we believe? And this is something you can figure out why you believe. Why do people believe what they believe? There's sociological reasons. I think I was originally a believer because of my parents, because of my church. Some people just want hope or comfort. And usually people who believe for comfort, I've seen people who in bad times they're Christian, they're on fire for Christ, and then everything's good again and they disappear. And I always wonder, okay, did they really know Christ? Did they really have a relationship with him? Were they really saved? Because it's you don't become a Christian just for comfort or just for hope. It's bigger than that. Why should we believe? Philosophical reasons. Christianity is the most consistent religion, it's the most coherent religion, and is the best explanation of the evidence. And so you'll see that as we go through the book. And that's really why we should believe. How do we discover truth? Their first principles, these are laws of logic that we all know. This is kind of like common sense. We all know the law of contradiction. The opposite of true is always false. Ask my kids, did the Yankees win or the Red Sox? If one said Yankees, one said Red Sox, I know they both didn't win. Somebody's wrong. Law of excluded middle, something is or is not. If you ask a couple, married couple, are you having a baby? The wife says yes, the husband says no. They can't both be right. Either she is pregnant or she's not. Law of causality, everything with the beginning had a cause. This is the fundamental principle of science. This is what science is based on. Francis Bacon, a Christian, said that scientist's job is to discover what caused what. So everything with a beginning had a cause. So the opposite of true is always false. We just saw that, the law of non-contradiction. That's common sense. So the 12 points, what's the third point? It is true that the theistic God exists. How are we going to prove the theistic God exists is truth? How do we study things you can't see? By their effects. Like, how do we study the wind? You want to know which way the wind's going or what the wind's doing? You look at a flag, right? You see the effect of the wind. And that's what we do. We're going to look for the effects to see if there is a God. And we're discovering God, not determining. He's just there. Okay, the third point is theistic God exists is true. And there are 4 arguments for that. The first is the cosmological argument, and that is the beginning of the universe. The cosmological argument for God says that everything that has a beginning has a cause, right? We know that, law of causality. The universe had a beginning, therefore the universe has a cause. All right, how do we know the universe had a beginning? Before Einstein, people believed that the universe was eternal. And that was kind of the essence of paganism, is the universe is kind of our mother and has always been here. But there are 5 ways that we can know the universe had a beginning. You can remember them through search. Second law of thermodynamics, says the universe is running out of usable energy, and the universe is going from a state of order to disorder. It's like a flashlight. The flashlight's been on for a while, and it's running out of energy. I know in science, with biology, I was studying with my daughter, the amount of energy stays the same. It doesn't decrease or increase, but it becomes heat, so it's not usable anymore. So the universe is running out of energy that can be used to do something. Universe is expanding, is for you, and it's not expanding into empty space. Space is expanding, like there's nothing, and then the space is expanding. And the Hubble telescope, he saw that, and Einstein came and sat and looked at it with him and said, oh my gosh, you're right. The universe must have had a beginning because look, it's expanding. You can see it going out. Okay, radiation echo. Radiation can be seen from the initial explosion that went out when it was first created. Galaxy seeds, this is amazing. It was discovered in the 90s by a Kobe, that's a space, like a spaceship out, an unmanned spacecraft. And what this means is temperature variations of the radiation enabled matter to congregate by gravitational attraction into galaxies. So these galaxy seeds, they're looking back in time because it takes a while for the light to get here. So they're going back in time and they're seeing right when the universe was created. And they're seeing these huge galaxy seeds, this huge amount of matter that become galaxies. And it's the largest thing anyone has ever seen. And what's amazing is these temperature variations show that the explosion and expansion of the universe was so precise that if it was too much, it would have gone off and nothing would have formed. If it was temperature was a little less, everything would have collapsed back on itself. So the temperature had to be 1 and 100,000ths exact to the exactness. Had to be that exact in order for the universe to form. Otherwise, it either would have collapsed or gone off and nothing would have happened. So people called this the fingerprints of the maker. An astrophysicist says they found the holy grail of cosmology. Stephen Hawking, who's one of the major atheists, he writes for atheism, said the most important discovery of the century, if not all time. Okay, and the next is Einstein's theory of relativity. He came up with that. It's accurate to 5 decimal places. It says basically that time, space, and matter all had a beginning. The universe had a beginning. So basically, it has been proven. There is no doubt that the universe had a beginning. Okay, that you can say to anyone and know you're 100% correct. Scientists will tell you, yes, the universe had a beginning. But people will say, wait a minute, if the universe had a beginning, why can't we say that God had a beginning? Because the law says that everything with a beginning had a cause. God didn't have a beginning. And you say, well, how do you know? Is God didn't have a beginning? If the universe had a beginning, you only have 2 options. Okay, for the universe to exist, there are only 2 options. Either the universe is eternal, which Carl Sagan, who I sat by, said, the cosmos is all there is or ever will be. Either the universe is eternal, or there's something outside the universe that's eternal. The universe is this computer, something that's outside is eternal. Those are the only options. Universe, something outside the universe is eternal. Those are the only options. It has been proven that the universe is not eternal. It had a beginning, so that means something outside the universe has to be eternal. All right? So science has proven that something outside the universe is eternal. What else do we know? We call it a first cause. We don't know what it is, but what else do we know about this first cause? Well, we know that it's supernatural because the universe is nature. Okay, it's time, space, matter. That's the natural. This is something that's outside of nature, so it's super nature. It's supernatural. Anything that happens outside of nature is supernatural. So whatever the first cause is, it's supernatural. It's got to be powerful to create the universe. It's got to be eternal because it's outside of time. Remember, time, space, they were all created. There was no space, and all of a sudden there's space. It's got to be outside of, it's got to be omnipresent, meaning everywhere. It's got to be immaterial. It's got to be personal because it made a decision to create this. Like a computer doesn't create things. I mean, it won't create something outside of itself because it doesn't have a will. So this has to have a will. It has to be personal. It has to be infinite because you can't have two infinites. It must be supremely intelligent, moral, and caring. So these are all things we know about this first cause. And these are something that even atheists have to agree. So the Bible describes just such a cause. In the beginning, God created time, space, and matter. We know that God is supernatural, powerful, eternal, omnipresent. You can go on and read personal. All the things that we learn from science about this first cause, we read about in the Bible. And this man is not an agnostic, but he said the best data we have are exactly what I have predicted had I nothing but the Bible to go on. So, and he's not a Christian, the guy saying that. This guy, Stephen Hawking, is a very famous physicist. He writes books about no God. He says, it appears to be very carefully chosen, but he won't say why. Why is there something rather than nothing? That is something you can ask your atheist friends. It's a very good question. Why is there something rather than nothing? There are only two options. Either no one created something out of nothing, or someone created something out of nothing. Okay, what's more reasonable? It takes more faith to be an atheist and believe that no one created something out of nothing. For the scientist, I love, this is a quote in your book. You've lived his faith, who has lived his faith in the power of reason. The story ends in a bad dream. He scaled the mountain of ignorance, about to conquer the peak, pulls himself over, and there is a band of theologians who have been sitting there for centuries because we have known all about this first cause for many centuries, right? And they're just now getting there. So the next argument is the teleological argument for the design of the universe. Teleological comes from the word design. Says that the universe exhibits marks of intelligence and design. Behind every complex design is a designer. The universe has a complex design, therefore the universe has a designer. So remember what we're doing is we're going through 4 things to prove that God exists, that there is a theistic God. And the first one's a cosmological argument. And the second one, this is the second one, is the second argument is the teleological argument. And we're going to probably end here. And next class, we're going to talk about the second one, the teleological argument, and we'll go to the other 2 if we can, and talk about why, what we can say to atheists, why we know beyond a reasonable doubt that a theistic God exists. So thank you very much, and yes, and we'll see you next.